I would ask all those in attendance to please mute their microphones when not speaking. In terms of order, the order of this meeting shall be as follows. After we do some committee housekeeping, the planning department through Greg will give a brief overview of the project, introduce the project and proponents. The proponent will present their proposal. At this time, the panel will sequentially go through with any questions for clarification. The proponent is free to address the questions as they come up. Once questions have been asked and answered, we will move again through the panel sequentially with comments. And I'll provide the list or the order of panelists, given that we don't have a full house tonight. After a round of comments and responses, a motion is made by a panelist on the project. The motion is typically seconded and then it's up for discussion before a vote is called. So we'll proceed with further ado to our first order of business, which would be the adoption of the agenda as circulated. So from can I please have a motion? So a motion from Phil to adopt the agenda as circulated. I need a second. Please.
Yeah, I'll second it, Ruchir.
Thank you, Ruchir. And then all in favor, I'm assuming I see Nicholas. And by a show of hands, there's a few of us enough here, so it's unanimous to adopt the agenda as circulated, and then a motion to adopt the minutes from the previous meeting of September 21st, 2021. So again, a motion from Phil, seconded by Ruchir as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Any amendments to the minutes that have been circulated? So hearing none, if there's no objections, we'll move on to the next piece. So assuming that the adoption of the minutes is carried. So the first project and the first and only item on our agenda is 877 Kent Street. And I will hand it over to Greg to introduce the proposal, introduce the proponents, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So I'll share my screen and then go through a very brief orientation of the project and then turn it over to the applicant and her landscape designer. So I believe everyone should be able to see that now.
Yeah.
So the subject property is at 877 Kent Street. You can see it there in the image. I think hopefully you can see this, but just to give you some sense of the parcel configuration, you can see this is essentially a double wide property in the context of single lots of half of its size. So ultimately the application that we have is for rezoning from the current RT1 zone, which is a duplex zone, into the RS2 zone, which is a small lot, single family residential zone. So with the rezoning were approved, then the applicant would proceed with subdividing the property into two, which would maintain the parcel configuration largely established in the neighborhood. So I've just sort of spoken to that, and I wanted to show you at a snapshot what the actual changes are in terms of the zoning standards, the building boxes that you have on the land. So the max height is largely, is the same. The lot width is different, obviously, because the rezone would enable the subdivision. So you go from 18 meters being the minimum to 10 meters. Lot depth changes slightly, although that's not being affected in this case. Minimum lot area changes, it's about half. And then you've got different setbacks. So you've got a 3 meter setback from the front yard proposed, 1.2 on the sides, and then 3 on the rear. It does say, though, that both the front and the rear yard have to combined equate to 12 meters. And then you've got density going from 0.5 times the lot area to 0.6. So the smaller lot, we provide a slightly higher floor area ratio, recognizing that to have a reasonably sized building, you need to have slightly higher floor area permissions. The parking permissions would be 2 spaces required for each of the units, and then if they were going to have an accessory residential or secondary suite, they would need another space. The official community plan sees these lands as mature neighborhoods where they contemplate low profile forms of housing, single family homes, duplexes, and potentially triplexes. You can see opposite Kent Street, it's a little confusing. This is actually all one land use. The parcel fabric's a little messy. I'm not sure if we've just never cleaned that up, but this is actually one use. It's the public works yard for the city. You can see a portion of it there in the orthographic image on the right-hand side, but this is the subject property. I'm just going to mute. Just mute your share. The OCP considerations, I think I just mentioned the mature neighborhood land use designation for low profile housing. The proposal does require a major development permit, which is why it's in front of the advisory design panel today. It's considered intensive residential development. So whenever you have a rezoning to enable the creation of a lot that's less than 12.1 meters of frontage, it's considered intensive residential development, and it's subject to a major development permit. It's a form of intensification that's subject to panel review. The last point I want to make is that the OCP policy support designing for maximum retention of trees. So the applicant has made effort to ensure that all trees that can be retained are being retained. There are 6 protected trees on the property. One of the trees is a Sitka spruce that you can see in the image here. It is in poor condition because it is affected by some sort of insect infestation that's reportedly tough to deal with. And our city's arboricultural technician looked at this tree, and when we presented this to council as part of an early review, we pointed this out as well. This tree is not in good shape, and seeing its removal and being able to replace it with 2 healthy trees, we saw as a better potential outcome from this process. There's a cherry tree offsite that it's unknown if we'd be able to retain it. So I think the intention here is that we'd see it potentially expected to be removed if impacted by development, and we would take securities to ensure. And I see Anne shaking her head, so perhaps the intention is to retain it. Okay. This is the offsite tree here that I mentioned, the offsite tree 5, the cherry tree. So I do think we can retain it. It would just be a matter of holding securities to make sure it's in good health when the work is done. Just in terms of the mature neighborhood infill development permit area guidelines, so these are the guidelines that apply to this type of infill development. There's references to trying to avoid mirror image design. And so we have worked with the applicant on different iterations of design to make sure that each of the new dwellings is distinguishable from one another. The proportions are unquestionably similar, but we've looked at some different treatments to the facade, different materials and openings to avoid the mirror image design. Open verandas and peaked roofs are encouraged. There are some flat roofs, but some efforts to address the bulk and the massiness or the massing of the building with some openings. Use of natural materials, brick, stone, concrete, no vinyl siding or stucco. So the applicant, in our view, has done a good job of dealing with that. And the garage should not dominate the front facade. The applicant is proposing landscaping to soften. We have had some iterations of review on the garage. It is tough on these narrow lots to have a functional garage while maintaining a reasonably sized front porch and entrance. So we've tried to work with the applicant on that, open to committee feedback in that particular item and any others, of course. Improvements to the public realm, I did want to point out, so Kent Street does not have a sidewalk on either side. It's a fairly unimproved street. We'd be taking a dedication of land if we need to, although I'm not sure that we need to take much, if anything. The road itself is wide enough, but the applicant would be required to do the improvements as a condition of the approval of the zoning. So the city would get potentially the introduction of a sidewalk up from the southern boundary of the property up to the corner, actually, so we would carry it all the way up. And the last is the use of light colored paving materials to reduce heat absorption. So that you'll notice the driveway and a lot of the material and color palette is of a lighter color to try and respond to that. So we did have a public information meeting on June the 3rd. There were no attendees. And we're here today with ADP for your feedback and considerations. depending on the feedback that we receive, we would work with the applicant to take a bylaw forward for consideration of first and second reading, and then there'd be a statutory public hearing from there. Then we'd have final readings of the bylaw, and then Ms. Gill could pursue building permits and construction. So with that, Mr. Chair, that's my overview. I'm happy to answer any immediate questions, and then we can hear from the applicant.
Are there any questions from the panel for Greg just on the presentation portion from the staff's perspective? So hearing none, Greg, if you want to introduce the applicant and landscape designer. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we have Sue Gill who is the owner. I can see Sue on the screen. And then I'm not sure, Sue, did you say you were going to have Paul here? I don't think so.
Actually, yes, Paul is also here with us
Okay.
here, and then Anne is joining us remotely.
Okay, so we have Ann Kula as well from Huckleberry Landscape Design.
Okay.
So I'll turn it over to you, Sue, if you want to share your screen, and you can go through your presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the panel. Just bear with me for one moment while I try to share my screen. Just one moment. Okay, I might need Greg's help again today, Greg.
On the top right of your screen, you should have a little up arrow that says share content.
On my PowerPoint, correct?
Within your Microsoft Teams application.
Just one moment. Unfortunately, cannot see that.
I'm not sure, Sue, if you shared your most recent version of your presentation with me. If not, I can.
I have not I can just email it to you really quickly. Okay, my apologies.
That's okay. Sorry, Sue. Just do you see the bar that has like the phone icon as well as the microphone and video and the time of the meeting? Do you see that as you wiggle your mouse around on the screen?
Oh, it says share desktop. Share desktop right there.
That's what yeah.
Okay. Okay, can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So on that gray bar where you see the red hang up icon,
Yes.
in the middle there's an arrow that says open share tray, right?
Yes, it says share desktop. And then it says desktop window, screen share.
Yeah.
Okay. Entire screen. So my PowerPoint is open, but I'm unable to share it for some reason.
Is it possible it's on another screen? Are you working with two screens?
No, it's all on the same screen here. So why is this not? There we go. Okay, can you share it now? I mean, can you see it now?
We can. Looking good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, my apologies. Thank you so much for your patience, Mr. Chair and the panel. Greg? Okay. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and the panel. Greg has introduced me. My name is Sue Gill. We're here with my designer, Paul Dhaliwal of Paragon Design and Ann Kula of Huckleberry, who's joining us remotely. Before I begin, I'd like to again thank the panel, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to present our project, and thank Greg Newman and his city staff for all their assistance. So we're planning to rezone of this property. Greg has already gone over the overview, so I won't take too much of your time. This is the subject property here. We'll be subdividing that into the 2 smaller lots. Here we have pictures of the existing homes to the north and the south side of the property. And here is, this is across the street. So looking east at the yard that Greg had mentioned. We've spent some time driving around in the neighborhood to get a feel of the homes, new and old, and noted that it's a good mix. Here is one example of a comparable new construction in the vicinity of the property. When designing the homes, we kept in mind the flow and context of the current neighborhood to ensure that it integrates with existing homes. We have retained Ann Kula to share with her expertise in the project, from initial recommendations to the final landscape. Greg has already gone over that she has recommended 1 tree for removal, and we are actually proposing to plant 4 trees. I believe only 2 are required as a replacement. We are proposing to plant 4 and are willing to work with the city in terms of the cherry tree, however, and recommends that as we move forward. Now moving into the renderings. Here is a front view renderings of the proposed homes. Keeping in line with the mature neighborhood infill guidelines, we have designed the homes so that they're not mirrored images. We designed one with an open veranda, having traditional details, and the other one slightly modern. To keep with the West Coast feel, we will be using natural materials such as stone, hardy board on one, and cement boards on the other, with glass and natural wood. In creating the visual interest, not only on the front views, we also carried it to back of both homes. You'll notice we added the architectural details of the stone, the hardy, and the boards in the rear of the homes as well, to break up the mass of the buildings and to avoid a box look. In this bird's eye view, you will note we will be using light colored paving stones and white concrete for pathways to reduce any heat absorption. Although the garages do face the street, we are using landscaping to screen and soften the appearance. Going forward, we hope to landscape any area that will not be covered by buildings or structures. That way, there's more landscaping. This is just another view of the homes looking north on Kent Street. And basically that is it. It's a quick wrap up. We are committed to meet all the DPA guidelines within the mature neighborhood infill and continue to work closely with the City of White Ark officials. And we look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will now, sorry, I'm getting a bit of noise here. I'll go to the panel for questions only at this time, starting with panelist Rushir.
My first question is to Greg. Greg, what is exactly that we are reviewing on? Detailed design of the proposed houses, or what exactly, or just in principle the subdivision context and the footprint, open space configuration, or just the form and character from outside?
Through you, Mr. Chairs. So the panel's primary focus should be on the overall quality of design.
Okay.
And its relationship to the public realm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I had pointed to a handful of the development permit area guidelines that I believe are most applicable to the project.
Sure.
So yeah, that's. Yeah.
So just if you could open the renderings that you just showed in your presentation, Sue. the one that you have from front, could you bring that up on the screen, please?
Yes, yes, just one moment, please.
Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, Sue, if you want, I'll bring it up. It'll just save us bouncing around a bit.
Okay.
Are you wanting to see all the renderings for sure?
No, just the front and the back.
Okay, let me bring those up and I'll share my screen.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
There was another one that had the other houses on the side as well. Yes, that's the one. Thank you. So are the houses on either side of these two developments rather set back compared to the setbacks of these proposed houses, or why are they kind of hidden? Are their setback much greater than these houses?
Sue?
Yes. The setback is not greater than these houses. I think the one on the north, maybe, but we tried to keep it in line with the existing neighbors there.
Okay, from the rendering, it looks as if these are kind of brought forward and they are either smaller in scale or. Okay, okay.
Sure, that gives you a better sense.
Sure,
It
sure.
could, I'm not sure. It could be because the lots are more narrow. That could be it. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was one. And if you could also show one of the rear renderings, please. So we see a lot of siding almost as tall as these two houses on the right and left. Are they right on the property line, as tall as these proposed houses, or why are those sidings on left and right shown as tall as the houses?
Okay. So those renderings, I don't think the sidings, the two homes on the sides, are a true picture. We had difficulty because Google can only do so much, and they are older homes on the side. One of them has a retaining wall. Anne has been out there, when she did her landscape plan, so she can perhaps help me and speak to that. But on the house that is to the south, it's a fence. So I don't believe these renderings are true to form, and my apologies for that. If I can go back to a picture where I'm actually showing the actual homes that are on the north and the south of this property, that would show those. I don't know, Greg, do you have that? I think I had them in my initial presentation, but I can bring that up, that picture.
Yeah, I can probably find it here. Rashir, what is it that you're trying to resolve? Like the rendering is not an accurate reflection.
I'm concerned about the interface of these new houses with the existing houses, both to the north and the south. If you see the landscape plan, it doesn't seem to have any separation between the hard area or any fencing or any planting or hedging or anything softening. I know they're kind of narrow setbacks on the side, but doesn't seem to have any context of how far the next building is, how it should be treated. It's just a property line. So I was trying to get a sense of what's happening on either side. That's all.
Yeah, I think to build on Rashir's question, if we're talking about context and fitting into the neighborhood, understanding on the site plan would be very helpful to see where the adjacent houses actually are and what kind of overlook these new houses, new upper decks are going to actually have. Right.
This may not be my place, but I'll jump in. I went to the area, the street, a couple of days ago, and I took some, quite frankly, excellent position photos that I have and I can share, but I don't know if that's appropriate here.
I don't have a problem with it, Phil, if they are handy, but unless Greg can locate some.
I can go back into, excuse me, Mr. Chair, I can go back into my PowerPoint if you want, and I can pull up that one picture. It's just, even when I was there, it's very difficult to take those pictures. Usually the vehicles are in the way and stuff, but I do have the two pictures the two homes on the north and the south are older homes. The one on the north has a retaining wall that is kind of, how do I say this, coming down somewhat, and which we will be working with the neighbor.
Yeah.
We've been in conversation with both neighbors. On the south is Brenda, and she's been okay with our plans today.
Okay. That's fine, Sue. So why don't you go ahead and try to get the picture up, and while you're doing that, I'll ask Greg a question. The adjacent houses, the neighboring houses, they're in the RT, what was it, RT1 zone?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, they're in the RS2, and actually I'll share. I've got Street View open, and it is a fairly accurate representation. Like, these sites next door have not been redeveloped.
Okay.
So I just to point, I think to Rashir's comment, you can see there is some siding as a representation, but I know you're also looking at openings and where openings may align with openings being 4 feet from a property line. You know, what's the relationship between what's being proposed versus what's there now? These are small lots along the entire block, and this is the view looking north. You can see, hopefully you can see that there's the retaining wall that Sue was mentioning, and then the siding of the building. It is the building, you are going up a hill, so the building immediately north is fairly elevated relative to this property.
Greg,
Okay.
Yeah.
can you hear me? If I can, I've got my arborist report, which has a couple of the photos of the houses, if you'd like to see those.
Yeah, I don't know if, were you guys seeing my screen when I was speaking to that?
We were, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so you might have pushed me out, so you've got control of the screen.
So can I continue with my question here?
Please do, Rashir, thank you.
So let's say either of the properties here shown here, I think they have the minimal mandated setback both to the north and south, correct?
To you, Sue.
They're very close for sure. I don't have a topographic survey that shows the adjacent buildings relative to property lines.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how we can make this work. So just on either of these buildings, we've got minimal mandated setback, right? It's probably 1.2 meters or thereabouts on either side. Is that correct, Sue?
Sue, you're muted.
Sorry, yes, Rashir, yes. On one lot, which is to the south, there is an easement. So we are restricted in that setback there. So
Okay,
that one is more because there's an easement. So that one actually is more than the minimum required for the house on the south, which is without the veranda.
Sure. So it is the south setback of the south building, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And that's more than 4 feet.
Yes. That's 5 feet. That's
5 feet. Oh,
that's
okay,
right.
okay.
That's correct.
All the other 3 setbacks, north of the south building, south of the north building, and north of the north building, they're all 4 feet?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to see if we can constructively make the separation better, especially wherever we have a potential of providing foot and a half of a green strip. If we have a potential of adding some sort of hedging or anything else that might be, or a trellis and a vine, just to make it separated well. That's all. That's what my intent is.
No, we're open to your comments and suggestions, definitely. And Anne is here, so she can make note of that. And we have no issues working with Greg, and your comments are welcome.
Sure. Even on the west side, I guess you will be served well with having that kind of a smart hedge to the west side as well. There is no planting shown on the west edge of the property at the back. Just a lawn is shown, so maybe some hedging and separation that side would do a world of good too.
Okay, thank you. Point noted.
So anyway, that's fine. Any
other questions?
Yeah, these are just the questions. I wanted to get a grasp of what's happening, and I'll reserve other things for later.
Thank you, Rashir. So moving to Nicholas for questions on the proposal, please.
Just some simple high-level questions. Maybe just to confirm, are the 2 houses identical in their floor plan and layout and size?
So no, they're somewhat different. They're not identical in size and layout because there is an easement on the south lot. So that house is a little bit smaller. It's 24 feet wide, and the one on the north is a little bit larger than that.
Okay. And I mean, it's pretty clear what you guys are doing. So mine's more for comments more than actual questions or clarifications.
No, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nicholas. So Phil, any questions for you on the proposal? You might be muted if you're speaking. Phil, okay. Phil, I think you're muted. I don't see you here.
Can you?
There we go.
Can you hear me? Okay. I will say that, Joe, I'm getting a lot of, what do you call it? Not reverberation, echo in your room. So it's hard for me to understand you sometimes. So I apologize if I keep saying what. So just a few questions. The renderings that you have in the file, and I'm going to go to that you sent us. There was the conceptual renderings. I guess it was file F, contextual renderings rather. When I looked particularly at the front yard and compared it with the landscape plan, it looked a little different. So maybe so tell me, let's go look at the front view on, if you can show that the front, Greg may have this because it's in the package that was sent to us. That's it. So while Rashir was talking about on the north and south side, I'm interested in the question of how accurate is this with respect to the landscape plan? What's the difference? And the first place I'm going to start, I'll let you, is that on the zoning compliance matrix, it says that the proposed front yard and rear yard setbacks are 3 meters, which can't be correct based on this or on the, I don't think on the landscape plan. So this goes to that question of how far back are those setbacks in these houses relative to the street and to the neighboring property. So that looks like 21 feet on the landscape plan, which would be perhaps similar to what I'm seeing in the rendering. Is that about right? About 21 feet?
Yes. Yeah, just one moment. I'm just discussing that with Paul here. Just one moment, please.
Yeah, Phil, it actually looks like it's much closer in the rendering. Looks like 22 feet of the driveway plus an additional 20 feet to the street. But when we look at the rendering, it looks like we're about 25 feet from the street. I'll wait.
I guess the question is whether that setback that came in the matrix as 3 meters was the city property and so wider.
So excuse me, Mr. Chair. I believe in the renderings, it's perhaps because the boulevard is also shown, or could be that. The setback is what it's stated on there.
So it's 22 feet. It's shown as 22 feet on the landscape plan. And that's, so just to be clear, Sue, it's 22 feet to the property line. And then from the property line to the street or to the curb, it appears to be another approximately 20 feet. The reason why we're having some dissonance here is because on the rendering, a car is about 18 feet in total for front to back and a little bit of space. So it appears as though your houses are only set back 25 feet from the street. It has an impact on how it's perceived, which is probably where Rashir's original question came from. What is the relationship with the neighbors on the side? Because it didn't look realistic. They should be pushed back about 15 or 20 feet.
Yeah, that's part of my question. Which is accurate? I'm not worried about 21 versus 22 feet, but I also, on this form that you sent us about the matrix about compliance, it says 3 meters. So I'm not quite sure how that related to it. That's clearly not accurate. And,
Mr. Chair, I can clarify that.
Thank you.
Through yourself, Joe, the table you're referring to, Phil, is a minimum setback. So it's a minimum setback of 3 meters from the front and the rear, and combined they have to be at least 12. The design that you see has a minimum of 6.73 in this image because the applicant is trying to accommodate 2 parked vehicles within the garage and 1 in the driveway to be able to provide for a secondary suite in the basement.
okay.
So the setback on the front is at least 6 for the parked vehicle. What's being shown is 6.73 in the landscape plan. And then they also have roughly 6, I believe, in the rear yard.
Okay. So thank you. So going back to the issue is, we're confirming that the setback from the street to the garage door is about 20 to 22 feet. No?
That's the property line.
It's at least 22 feet as shown in the landscape plan. And
But
as
that's the property line.
From the property line, that's right, yes.
Yeah, not to the street. The street is another matter, right?
Sorry. Okay, thank you.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Chair. It is 22 feet from the property line, yes.
Thank you.
And there's another 10 feet of the boulevard.
That's what I was referring to. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm juggling a lot of screens at the moment. Hopefully you can see that there. That gives you a clear illustration of this is based on a legal survey, so it is very cluttered, but this is the representation of the flare onto the street. You can see reference to edge of pavement being over here. So there's certainly, you know, roughly 3 meters, you could say 2 to 3 meters from the property line to where you have edge of asphalt.
Thank you. And just to confirm, that's approximately where the neighbor to the south, where their garage entrance would be, roughly. The same setback.
Sorry. Yes, approximately.
Within a couple of feet.
Yes.
The home immediately south of this property is far closer to the street than what's being proposed here. So you can see that in the image. I mean, essentially some of the projections on their building are at the property line. So they're not making the accommodation for a parked vehicle off street in the front yard. A lot of the streets in the city of White Rock have people, like you can see in the aerial here, people parking within the boulevard. With redevelopment, we make it a point of preventing against this from happening. So the applicant would be required to install the sidewalk within the boulevard and establish a curb and bring that from the south boundary of their lot line up to the corner. So we've been working with Sue and her team on some preliminary iterations of that design.
So Greg, if the applicant is able to do the boulevard treatment and let downs and the sidewalk and all that stuff, so it'll predominantly be only in front of the proposed development and then discontinued on the other properties which do not develop, and it'll be a sporadic exercise at sidewalk on one and not on the other one and maybe on another one. Is that how it is?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. There's the other thing that we would potentially do is take cash in lieu.
Yeah.
So the fact is, in this case, it's close to the corner where we're able to at least draw the connection up and try to tie into this existing sidewalk. But to your point, Rashir, if it was mid-block, we wouldn't be taking a little segment of sidewalk. We'd be looking at taking cash in lieu, and once we have enough, we would build out.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
back to my second and I think my last question, or whatever number this is. Go back to that rendering of the front, and then this is difficult because it's a rendering, and I'm trying to compare this with the landscape plan, which was fairly difficult for me to read, at least on my computer. So is that the driveways? I know you're trying to accommodate one car, and I'm trying to look to see is this fairly accurate with respect to lawn versus driveway?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that last part? I didn't get that.
Okay, I'm trying to address two issues with respect to the front lawn, and it relates to the design guideline of softening the effect of the garage doors. So of the garages, the way I'm looking at this looks to be fairly accurate, close to what's in the landscape plan, but it's a little difficult for me to tell the actual dimensions when I'm looking at this. So I'm looking at this rendering, and I see cars there, and the cars. Are you getting feedback from me?
Yes, you're breaking up.
Yeah, we're all having difficulty hearing you, Phil. I think, is there a way to get onto earphones or something? Phil, we can't. We're getting a lot of feedback.
Wait a minute.
Perhaps, Mr. Chair, anyone that's not speaking, if we want to put our mics on mute, I'll mute people and then we'll let.
Yeah, please do.
You know what? This hasn't happened before. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. There's just some sort of strange feedback.
Other people need to mute. Would that be a reason?
I've been muting consistently. I think most everyone has.
Let me try again. All I want to know is when I look at the rendering and compare that with what's planned on the landscape plan, what can I expect? How accurate would this be in terms of the plantings, the softening of the garages, the percentage impermeable versus lawn versus the pavers? So give me a sense. That's a question of giving me some sense of how accurate this is.
And Sue, it is okay if it's not accurate. It's just a question, so we can ascertain.
Yeah, no worries. So like I said, we're committed to work with the city, and we have Ann Kula here. She has reviewed the renderings and the site plan, and she has concurred that the plans, everything is as she's designed. We are willing to, I can say that it would be pretty concise as to what you see. If the cars or the driveway is throwing it off a little bit, I apologize for that. But like I said, we can soften it up more by adding a few more. I can see Anne has her hand up, so Mr. Chair, if she can speak.
Yeah, if you could, Anne. But before you do that, I should say that what we're looking at in front of us is face-to-face on the buildings. We've already been told it's 4 feet to the property line to the buildings. That means that we're seeing approximately 8 feet of grass on this rendering. If you look at the landscape plan, it's showing approximately 4 or 5 feet on the north property only. So I think that's some of the confusion that's occurring. So Anne, if you could address that, please.
Yeah, that's the issue that I'm raising. So I'm gathering it hasn't been written in stone, if I can put a pun on there, but that you're flexible, and that's one of the feedback that we could give as part of the panel. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. But Anne, I think you still want to make a comment. Your hand's still up.
Yeah, please. Hello, everybody. Nice to be here. So the lawn does, on the landscape plan, as I'm looking at it, it does go right out to the street. Some of the, I guess the, sorry, the hatching, the grass pieces didn't show up on all of it. The renderings are very close to what is on the landscape plan. What will be different are the trees on the neighboring properties, because they're not, there's a, pardon my French, but a crappy little pine tree right here. Oh, sorry, you can't see my mouse, on the neighbor to the south. And obviously the hill is not shown on the north side, and the cherry tree is not there. So the plants that are on the landscape plan are shown in the rendering. but the side outside of the property, those trees are different. And on the landscape design, I will extend the, I'll fix the lawn hatching and stuff so it is more obvious that the lawn does go right out to the street.
What about the thuya to the north in the front setback and the thuya between the two properties here? And they extend all the way till the end. I don't see them on. And the sidewalk that we talked about, it is probably shown, a little bit of sidewalk is shown on the landscape plan as well. There's Kent Street and there's a wide some sort of a space between the driveway before the driveway begins. So I don't think those elements are evident in the renderings here.
Not sure which, so you're saying between the street and the property line?
That's right. You see, Greg talked about the sidewalks, and then in the landscape plan, there seems to be some there. Yeah, and in the landscape plan, there seems to be a break between the Kent Street and where the driveway begins, which I'm assuming is probably the sidewalk, which is not shown on the rendering here. And and the thuya that you see in the front setback, both between the two buildings, which is possibly there shown between the two buildings in the rendering, but on the north side, I don't see thuya extending front of the building in the setback area either. So that it's not going to appear as open as it looks in the rendering here, is what I would think.
I have the thuyas going right to the property line.
Yeah, that's
in the drawing.
That's right. In the drawing they are, but in the rendering, that we have here, it doesn't seem to be extending well beyond the property, beyond the building, up until the property line. It seems to be almost flush with the property. So
I see what you're saying.
Yes. So all the landscaping seems to come a bit forward to give the true scale of what's happening here. And also the rendering seems to have been developed with a much more flatter look than what is actually the topography on the street. If you go to Google Street View and have a look, it's probably a bit more slopier than what it's shown on the rendering. So yeah, rendering is a bit different. Yes, you see, yeah, if you go to the right, turn to the, yes, you see a bit of an incline there. And then when you go to the south side, you'll see a reasonable drop as well. And also in front of the property, you see the retaining wall in the boulevard area reasonably slopey. Whereas on the rendering, it seems to be rather flat.
Yeah, just looking at the site plan we shared, looks like there's a meter drop from north to south.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the renderings, there are a few different other views as well. I'm not sure if it was uploaded, but in the renderings, the slope is shown. That particular one, perhaps because it's a front view, you can't really notice the slope on that one. But I believe the one I have up there where it's showing north on Camp View, you can see that slope on there. So it has been taken into account.
Yeah, so if you see the driveways on both of the houses seem rather at the same level, and especially the way they've been designed with one going to the left and the other one going to the right, one going to the southern edge and the other is sticking with the northern edge, there would be a significant grade difference, is what we're saying. Yeah. So yeah, that's fine. I think it's a moot point. I think let's concentrate more on the design than on the rendering, I would say.
So if you don't mind, panel, I'm going to move to Faye, who I saw joined us a little bit late. Also a panelist, if she has any questions, and then we can, I think, suffice it to say, go to my questions and then to comments. But starting with Faye.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Of course.
So what I'd like to, I see the front view here, and I've, all the comments that have come up are totally accurate in terms of the slope on Kent Street. Can you go back to the very first drawing that you had? Because I kind of missed that. Yes, that one. So this is very different from what's being proposed on the front view.
Yeah, through you,
So
Mr. Chair. That might
this to me, sorry, I'm just trying, you know, and I'm more on the community side, not an architect, but these look like two different contemporary West Coast style homes. Now, if you go to the other view, the front view that shows the landscaping.
Yeah, Faye, I think that this was probably for the original submission. It looks like it has evolved since then. So maybe Greg can provide some clarity.
Different.
Yeah, you're correct. You did it. They are different in that.
Okay.
So Greg, is there?
The other, yeah.
That's
and
all
so
I was
the
gonna
other
say.
thing
May I,
is-
excuse me, sorry, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my apologies. In our workings with the city officials, there were changes that we had done to ensure that we are following within the guidelines of the DPA, and that was one of the changes we've done. I have not submitted the newer version of that, so that is, Faye, you are correct, that is incorrect. So I do have
Okay.
the new ones would have, is the identical as the same, they just show the colors on it, but you're correct, that is
Okay.
not.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So the other thing I'm looking for is the front entrance. It doesn't look like from this view, I don't see the front entrance, and that's one of the issues on 22.91 for the under the building.
Yeah, absolutely. They're sorry, go ahead, Sue. Response to
Thank you,
that
Mr.
question.
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Faye, for those comments. Actually, like Greg and we have been working together on this for a few months. The plans have been changed. We have brought the entrance forward by about 5 feet. I believe because of the landscaping on this shot, you cannot see it. But on the other views, I can show you the entrance is in view. And if that's something, again, I said we're flexible on, if the panel really wants us to move it forward by another few feet, we are okay to do that. In my talks, consultation with Greg, you know, at the end, it is going to be a long corridor that really doesn't serve any purpose. But if that is something that is required, and that's what the committee wants, that's something, again, that we are flexible to do.
So when you say a long corridor, you're talking about a long walkway with stairs up to the front entrance. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to the actual corridor inside. So in the building envelope, I believe Greg and I discussed this in detail. If Greg wants to.
So it sounds like you either have you walk outside to your door, or you pull your door to the front, but once you open the door, you're walking down a long hallway before you get into your house.
Yes,
So
that's correct. And we've already brought it forward after our discussions with Greg by 5 feet. So now if we bring it another 5 feet, then it's just going to be you coming to the house, and then it's just really long corridor of maybe like 8 to 10 feet. With that doesn't serve any purpose. But then
can you change the interior though? If you change the front doorway, can you possibly redesign?
Well, it sounds like they pitch themselves into that layout because they have the garage taken most of the width.
It's symptomatic. It's symptomatic of trying to get too much density on the lot.
And it comes to the narrow lots. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, Faye, before we move forward?
No, that's it.
So I have some questions that are related to some of the discussions happened already. When we're looking at what it means to be contextual fitted, address the street. I'm seeing a veranda, or I guess it's actually an upper deck, called a veranda, I guess, on the upper story of the north house. And then when we go to the back of the house, there's no windows facing the backyard. There might be one window and a small one. If you could click the middle one there. So my question is, have you given much thought in terms of the interface between the occupants of the house, their front yard, their street, and the backyard? Like kind of looking at nature and tying some aspect of your developed landscape in with the house, because they seem very separate from one another. And it's unusual these days to see main living spaces in houses turn their back to their own backyard. So I just want to know what your thought process was for this elevation and for the front, please.
Okay, just one moment.
It's going to look ugly.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for your comments and a few minutes. So
Well,
we
that's a
do
question.
have, yes, the question. So the windows on the rear of the home, yes, we have those two small windows. Because there is going to be a secondary suite, we are limited by having a window within 3 meters to the entrance. So we
Yeah,
cannot.
sorry to interject, but I'm not talking about the code reasons for choosing things because you chose to put a suite there. I'm talking about the design, utility, and enjoyment of that space for the occupants of the main house,
Okay.
right? So your choices in how you deal with the code issues are your own.
Okay.
But I don't know if those are sufficient enough to inform what I would say is obliterating the back elevation of the house. I mean, it's like from a design perspective, and that's what we're here for. It's a very curious choice to me. If you were giving that backyard to the suite because of that exiting issue that you've identified, then it would stand to reason that they would have physical access to the backyard. But for some reason, I don't feel like that's the intent either. So perhaps clarify if that was the only reason, and if that was the reason, that's fine. I just want to know why there's no windows on the back of the house.
Primarily, that is the main reason, Mr. Chair, that there's no windows. You'll see on both homes, there's a large deck and they have the windows, that would allow for, use of the backyard. And then the backyard, the way it is, can be used, I guess, by both the tenants downstairs and the main occupants of the house.
Okay, and with the front, if you would kindly go back to the front. And then the same question here, addressing that visual relationship between occupants of a house and the street. You feel that you've done everything that you can, given your request to have a house with secondary suites, right? So, because the notion of a home and being able to have that visual interface, the reason why we talk about verandas is so that people could sit on the verandas and actually talk to their neighbors as they're walking by, eyes on the street, everything that makes a community. What I see here are 2 garage doors. I just want to know a little bit more about where you came to this as the ultimate solution for this, what I find is a very difficult interface with the street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the veranda, as I stated earlier, we do have the veranda on the north side. That is where, like you said, people can, if you're walking by, you can step out there, have a chat. On the house to the south, we do have a restriction of the easement, and on that house, you can't see it here, but there is a balcony or a veranda on the south side of that home, on both houses. They have on upstairs, there's verandas on the south side as well.
I have to.
So the house on the north only has 2 verandas in the front and to the south, and the house on the south, which is a more modern finish, only has it on one side due to the easement.
So Sue, I just want to interject for a second because we need to be clear about something. A veranda is not the veranda is not a second floor deck. The veranda has a relationship to the ground. Those are upper floor decks that we're seeing, the roof decks, right? Just to be clear. You say that there's an interface, particularly on the north lot with the street, but that's a bedroom, and that's a secondary bedroom. It's not even the master bedroom. So again, I'm just starting to wonder how much thought was actually put into the interface of this dwelling unit to be able, with the street, and to be able to fit into the neighborhood. And if this is it, that's fine. I just want to know if this was if any of this was considered, or if it was just how do we get as much on here as we can.
Okay. So, hello, Mr. Chair.
Oops. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, that I was breaking up. Okay, so thank you for your comments and your questions. we are subdividing this one of the final lots on this block. And we are dealing with 2 narrow lots. We've tried our best to try to adhere to most of the elements as we can of the mature neighborhood guidelines. You know, by adding in the landscaping and everything. And I think, like I said, I'm open to your ideas. If there's anything that you really would like for us to change or that would comply more so than it is already. But as you've stated, I've done the best that we thought we could with the amount of space that we have, and ensuring that, you know, we are trying to make it 2 affordable homes, you know, allowing for, you know, possible secondary suite that possibly used by extended families, especially with the pandemic now. I'm finding that families are choosing to live together more so than being separated. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sue. A question to Greg. Is it a requirement to have the required parking spaces enclosed?
No, it's not.
Okay, because Sue, one of the reasons why we don't have this interface as we move southward down Kent is because not all of the garages are enclosed, not all of the car spaces are enclosed. So you can actually have frontage. I just went on Google Street View, and as we go down about 3 or 4 houses, you really start to see the front doors, you start to see front rooms, albeit the parking is in the front yard, but at least there's a visual connection. I'm not suggesting that that's the answer, and that's certainly not our purview here to tell you the answer. It's just to comment on what's in front of us. So to segue from my question, if that interface isn't highly considered, then it makes it difficult to support what's in front of us, because if we do, this is what's built, and this starts to define the character of the street in the future. That was all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so in the absence of any other questions, I would like to go to comments, and we'll go back in the same order that we started. So starting with Rashir, comments to the applicants.
Can you hear me?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Is that good? Yeah, we can hear you.
Around to something that has come up on the rent. Can you show the back rendering for a minute, the front and the back? What we haven't really talked about, and I'd like to get clarity because there seems to be, again, I'm not sure what I'm seeing or what's accurate. There, okay, good, thank you. So on the house on the left, this is showing the concrete walkway to be on the left side, and I'm not sure what it is there. And when I look at the front, it's difficult. So go to the front. In other words, I see grass on the right of the right house, the house on the right, which is what, number 2, lot number 2. Anyway, could you go to the front? And this goes back to the question that to some extent that Faye asked, is where so the entrances are on the left side of each. That's clear to me from the drawings, right? Where the way I'm reading the contextual information, the architectural drawings rather, is that the concrete walk, that for each house there's a concrete walk between front and back, and a gravel walk and a gravel path. My understanding is that the concrete for the house on the left is on the left side of that, and there's gravel on the right. For the house on the right, it's the same. It's the gravel on the left and the concrete on the left and the gravel on the right. So I just want to understand. It's not a criticism or a comment about this. Is that correct? And if that's the case, then between the 2 houses, there's half of the space between those 2 houses is gravel, and half of it is concrete. Just clarify if that's sort of like, is that a correct understanding?
Sure, go ahead, assuming Anne or Sue.
Dan here. Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And there will be looks like a fence in between the 2 properties, as there's a bit of a retaining wall.
Okay, thank you. It was just a question. I don't need to make a comment.
Okay, so without any other questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Phil
Yes.
was breaking up a little bit, but I just want to clarify that the walkways, the concrete walkways are on the north sides of both of the homes. So on the left, on the south side, there should be grass. On the walkways are on the north side of both of the homes.
That's not the way I.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't make sense though, in my mind, because you've got the separation between the two homes. So the house that's on the south, on the north side of that house, you're saying there's gravel, correct?
Okay.
That's what's on the plan.
And then
Okay.
in between that.
So that may
the
be an
next house-
inconsistency.
Yeah, in between that, the house that's on the north, is there gravel or is there cement? Is that what you're asking, Phil? I gotta get this, just one sec. Yeah, that doesn't,
No, if you look at the various designs I'm looking at, the way I'm reading them, this is site plan final for lot number 1, which is the lot on the right, if I'm not mistaken. The gravel looks like it's on the right side between the north house. You know what? I don't need to get it. I'm confused. Yeah. Is that? Yeah.
We can't hear you, Phil. Or I can't hear you.
And that's the lot. That's the house on the right side. Is that? It doesn't make any difference. I'm confused. Yeah, that's it. So I'm confused, and I don't need to be confused nor delay this. I think the key question is there needs to be clarity and about what happens between the houses on the north, the south, and in between the two lots. That's sort of like that's a comment. And sorry, Joe. And paying attention to infiltration issues. So there could be a reason to have gravel on, concrete and gravel next to each other, but it also raises issues about the fence. I'm just throwing it out. I'm confused when I looked at some of the renderings, some of the designs, and now the comment about where the concrete walk is relative to where the entrance is. So that I just need to leave it at that right now. I'm not upset about it.
No, yeah, and your point, your question and point are taken, Phil, that just a final come through to make sure that everything was coordinated and clear would have been appreciated, but I'm sure that you will make it all clear moving forward. So I would like to move to the comment section now of the meeting. So I'm going to go over to Rushir for your comments on the project, please.
It's by and large, I think, a well thought out volume and scale and everything. It's just that the renderings don't seem to be very accurate and have been misleading, but more or less, I don't seem to have major objections with the way volumes and object and space arrangements are made here based on what is allowed. I do have a few suggestions that will make, in my opinion, the project more palatable and well contextually situated than what is shown on the drawing so far. But yeah, by and large, I feel more comfortable with this kind of an arrangement compared to others that we've seen previously. One of the things that I like is the way you've separated the buildings, and I know there's a minimum setback, and you can't really do much because they are narrow lots anyways, and we cannot expect you to increase those setbacks from 4 to 5 feet. They would take away from the almost practicality of design to make it really thin. But what I could do is offer a few suggestions here. For example, the last point that Phil raised about sidewalk gravel, sidewalk gravel, sidewalk gravel. I think that point is very easily solved by making your sidewalks in the middle and allowing more planting both towards the northern and southern interface of the properties. Then you could have a couple feet of planting medium, and then you could have a fence and a little bit of gravel strip as well to allow for drainage. And if you did that both to the north and south and have your sidewalks in the middle for both, I think it'll be a very good solution in this scenario. You could do a little bit of landscape enhancement, which hasn't been shown in the rear yard as well. And you could also treat those two sidewalks rather more effectively and in a aesthetically more pleasing way with both of them together, rather than having one sidewalk and one gravel and then one sidewalk and one gravel kind of a thing, and not allowing for planting or hedging to happen both towards the north and the south. Also, I guess a little more finesse might be required in the rear elevations, like Joe pointed out. There seems to be large blank areas, and see what you can do to make them more relatable to the backyard a little bit. Most of your volumes, as I said, are working okay. I don't know whether city does allow a little bit of variance with allowing one of the properties to be a little forward than the other, allowing for similar footprint. If that could happen, then I guess both of them could receive more southerly sunshine and still offer a little bit of variation from the road perspective. But I leave that to Greg and his staff to see if that's a possibility. But that is something that came to my mind. I guess apart from that, more or less they are kind of acceptable to me. I would definitely spend more time in working out the interfaces both towards the north and the south. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bashir. And so moving to Nicholas, please. Nicholas, comments, final comments, please.
Yep, thanks, Joe. So I think some very similar comments to Rashir. So I think the comment of if it's ever possible to shift your two buildings in plan would be, I think, a very favorable thing to do. So they're just kind of slightly offset, because right now from the street view, it is, because you do have they are side by side, does feel a bit of a wall. But I think my main comment, and I don't say this in a purely negative way, but because I'm in Vancouver, I'll be honest, they look much more like a laneway home than they do like an actual regular home, so to speak. Because the first thing you do see are the garages, not the front entrance. And so, which is very similar to what you would see in a laneway home, right? The primary is the garage. And that being said, I think you should review the front elevation and look at, if not both, at least one of them, changing the garages so they're a single one-car garage and rechanging the interior layout. So you bring the front door to the driveway or closer to the driveway. And I know that maybe not work with what your vision was. You know, maybe it sells better to have a two-car garage. But personally, I wouldn't approve the project the way it is, mainly because it's a bit of it's a bit too much of a garage, two garages, with a little living space on top, right? And so that's my main comment on the front. Whether the landscape, you know, between the floor plan and the rendering, that's just consistency between the drawing packages, that you just make sure that your team pays close attention to that. The unfortunate part, and I think this is maybe more of a general comment, no matter how much time you spend on your floor plans, we end up looking at your renderings the entire time. So that's why your renderings need to be pretty spot on, because if we see that the rendering looks beautiful, but then we look at the floor plan, be like, well, it's too obvious to see that the two don't match. So and like I said, we end up spending, we're all in the same boat. We all end up looking at renderings more than we do at floor plans. We look at floor plans just to make sure they kind of work. But in terms of the image, we end up looking at for the renderings. So that being said, so on the front view, again, my main comment is I think you should, of at least one of them, you should change it to a minimum of 1-car garage, redo the front elevation so it looks more a little bit quote unquote of a house. And going to the back, I think the back, they are identical copies. There's not much of a difference other than one is a hardy plank, the other one is a square panel, but you can probably argue that they're exactly the same. So in that being said, I think more attention should be spent on actually making the rear elevations different as well. When it comes to landscaping, I mean, they're too small in the backyards. They work. It'd be nice to have a little more vegetation, but I'll leave that to Rashir and landscape guys to comment more on that one. Yeah, so I think, again, going back, my main focus, I think, would focus on the main elevation, fixing that up, see if we can get them look a little less like a garage, and then the back as well, see how we can differentiate the two a bit more. So I'll focus on those two today.
Great, thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
And over to you, Phil. You're next on the list for comments, please.
Ken, how are you hearing me now? Okay, thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you to the applicant. I think that we're trying to be constructively critical, but overall, I really do like what you're doing with the following concerns. One is, I think several of us are pointing out the garages are awfully prominent, and I'm not sure how to soften that. One is through landscaping, the other one is through material, and we don't want mirroring. I think that Nicholas's suggestion, which I had thought about but wasn't going to raise, about one garage, certainly addresses one issue. It makes it less prominent, but it also takes away one spot from the house. And quite frankly, I'm sensitive to the fact that this is not a large development with a lot of money for architects and making changes all the time. So that's a call on your part. The same thing, I think that there are the suggestion about making anyway, the issue is about the garage doors being very prominent, and it needs to be softened in some way, and that's sort of the general comment. The other concern, and before I forget garages, it hasn't come up. I'm a big proponent, as Greg knows, about EV-ready garages, whether they're apartment buildings, but in a single-family house, one of the proposals that's coming down soon, or maybe approved soon, is that I think this would apply to these houses, that you at least rough in for EV, electric vehicle ready. Okay, just a detailed comment. My other concern with respect to is really about the landscape. It has to do with the footprint and the concrete, the pavers, the gravel, the lawn. I mean, all of them, where the mixing is, and how to maximize infiltration, minimize hard surfaces, or where you have hard surfaces, maximizing them being able to infiltrate. You've got a small lot, so it's difficult, and some of the issue that Rashir mentioned about putting the changing so you've got the two walkways together. That's a decision, I think, on your part about whether you have the two entrances side by next to each other rather than both on the left side of the houses. So that's not something it's a judgment call on your part, and how much you want to, what effect that has on the interior design and redesigning all of that. But these are solutions or suggestions. Overall, I think the key thing for me is the garage, is the prominence in terms of character of the street. I think this will improve the street. I'm supportive of it. I think there are some issues to deal with, and I'm sure that you can deal with them. Before we go, I want to see, and minimize the amount of driveway if you can. That also helps. Minimize the paved entrance to the driveway. If it's only for one car, I know you may want to get another car out at the same time, a car there, but see what you can, what can be done about that. So those are I think those are my comments. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you, Phil. And then moving to Faye, final comments, please.
Hi, just want to say I think it is a definite improvement to the street, your proposal. You are dealing with, small, narrow lots. My concern is, as I brought up, the front door, from the renderings, I couldn't see the front entrance. So if that can be adjusted or modified in whatever way. Also, the biggest thing for me is when you look at the photos, the front view, all you can see are garages. And I think maybe, reconsidering trying to make it look more of a home rather than a garage. From the community point of view, if you can do that, I think it's definitely an improvement. And think of it in terms of, it's going to be a home for two families. So I know parking's an issue, but it's getting out of hand with the congestion. People moving in and they're parking on the driveway, they're parking on the street. Two-way streets becoming almost a one-way street now. So we really need to look at those issues in terms of how many people can move into one house and everybody have vehicles. So, looking to the future.
Thank you, Faye. Any other comments? Any other comments, Faye? No? Thank you. So I'll proceed with mine then, Sue. I think you're seeing a common refrain here. There's a lot of concern about the garage doors, the prominence of the garages. Nicholas certainly touched on a design possibility. Currently in the configuration, there's two cars in tandem already. Maybe there's other solutions to help bring some living space forward. Maybe some spots are enclosed, maybe they're tandem, maybe none are enclosed. I don't know the answer, and that's you to discover. But I think that from my perspective, my biggest concern is, and as Faye just said, it's a home, but as Nicholas said, it feels like a garage. So that's a real problem for me, because what we're doing is, like I said earlier, setting the tone for future development. And it's difficult to say because at first glance, the renderings are kind of pleasant. But once we drill down deeper into it and understand what we're actually showing to the street and how the occupants would actually experience the house, it becomes less and less convincing, and it starts to look more like eye candy. What I'm personally interested in is making sure that whatever house is designed there is successful for the street, but also for the people living there. And there has to be a balance between what you provide in development versus what people would really appreciate, both the community at large walking by and those within the house. So there are alternatives. Like I said, changing the parking configurations would mean changing the upstairs configuration, because currently your second bedroom sits on top of the garage. So there would potentially be some design work to do to make something like that happen, whether it be a full-on change or a partial change. I certainly appreciate that the top floor is set back significantly on the south sides, because that helps to reduce the mass and give you the option to put those side decks. But sometimes even the best ideas, even though they're a good start, might not hold up for the rest of the proposal when you start pushing through all of the other requirements that you'll hear through us and through others. So I don't know, I think it's been said already, if it were to stand on its feet today and our support meant that it would be built like this, I don't think that I would support it, because to me it does look like garages as well. So really it's going to be up to the panel to construct a motion here so that we can give you the best guidance on moving forward. So with that, I will open or you can unmute yourself, Sue, and perhaps if you want to respond generally to the comments, And then what we'll do is I'll move to the panel to create a motion or someone to propose a motion for this project. So if you have any responses to the comments that have been given, we're more than happy to hear them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the panel, for all your comments. They're very valuable to us. I would like to perhaps not address, but speak to a few of them. I understand that the garage seems to be a concern for a lot of the comments. As to Phil, first, before I go forward, the EV charger, yes, that definitely will be roughed in because it's becoming a requirement nowadays. I mean, every second home, has an electric vehicle, so that definitely will be done. Having the garage, we have restricted with the narrow lots, and I understand you do see that and agree with that. However, having the two-car garage, every home has multiple vehicles, and it's just more practical and usable to have the two-car garage. Like I said, we can work with it and see what we can come back with. Landscaping, definitely. We can soften it with lots of landscaping as much as we can. I liked Phil's idea that where we can maybe less the paver stones, we can maybe do them so they're not as wide. So perhaps that will take away from the dominance of the garage. That's something that we'll have to work with my designer. My designer here, Paul, would like to speak to you, Mr. Chair, and the panel regarding the garages, if you would allow.
Sure, by all means, Paul.
I'm Paul Dhaliwal. I'm the designer of these houses. So the main concern, the garage is so dominant is on this lot, the zoning does not allow you to have a second story all the way up to the entrance. So there's an angle of containment. So on the southern side of the houses, you have to have the house set back in. So whatever we have a garage, we can only have the second story over the garage. I cannot bring anything else on the entrance so that upstairs you can see a bigger, so it looks like a house. So that is in the zoning, it cannot be changed. So that's why the garage and the room up on the both houses has to stay as it is. And I don't think the city is going to allow us to have the variance so that we can bring the house more on the south side and don't have a deck so that it looks like a bigger house on the top floor. That is the reason. That's why it's only a garage on the second story. The rest all along from the front to back, I cannot have anything, not even have a covered deck. Nothing is allowed. So that is the reason, being a narrow lot, garage and the second story over the garage is only allowed. They're not allowed on the south side. That is the reason. It's more like just one side we see it. Other half, like I would say, two sides of the sea and one side of the house, we don't see anything on the second floor.
Right. And that makes sense why it was probably appreciated by me that there was less mass, and I didn't realize that it was a zoning requirement to contain that.
Right.
So again, it just adds to your design problem by adding another parameter. There are always solutions. There are always. So but I do appreciate your comment.
What I could suggest more is like I could have like over the garage, the veranda is like we could have a covered roof at the front so that you don't see a straight wall up. That way we can break the mass from the lower floor to the upper floor. So it's not as dominant as it looks on the drawings right now. That way we could have an extended overhang in front of the garage. That way you see more roof line at the front. So that way it will break up the mass from the front to the top and it'll carry on to the south side of the building. So you have a covered area in front of the garage and on the side of the garage and over the entrance. That way it won't look like as dominant as possible. Thus, as we are doing landscaping, that'll add more to the facade of the house. It'll break it up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that as a design device, but that doesn't address the problem of interface, right? But we'll leave it at that for now. We're not going to design or redesign it today. Unless you have any other responses to comments, I'll go to the panel for a motion from the panel. If anyone is willing or able to formulate a motion moving forward.
Let me make a comment, and then if possible, as you know and you don't like, I'd like to have a conversation before moving something and then withdrawing the motion. Anyway, I'm thinking more about this business about two-car garage. It's a given. Because actually we want less cars parked on the streets, or in the driveways, so there's a reason for the two. So it's a given. If you're going to have these homes, it's given. I think it all comes down to how to soften it through landscaping and the front design. And to me, that and there's some other changes that they're going to have to work on. The question fundamentally is, does it need to come back to us? That's really the bottom line. I'm supportive, and I'm sure that they're going to work. Something can be worked out. For me, the question is, can we be of value? And because I would vote for it on the assumption that they'll do the best that you can do with these two small lots. So I really want to know. So that would be my motion, but I'm not making it. It's really a question of what's our role with respect to it coming back. It's free advice, in effect. And it goes back to Greg and his staff and how much value we add to it. Anyway, that's sort of where I'm sitting. I can see it coming back or not coming back.
I actually, unfortunately, I'm going to be the opposite from Phil. Because I think it's not, and again, this is not to the applicant, this is kind of an open discussion point, but this goes back to other reviews we've done, and also comes to the question that you brought up, Phil, as well, is what we decide today, how does it affect the next application? Like, or what example are we setting for the next lot who has to come and subdivide?
All right, good point.
Well, are we going to now allow, informally, that you can now put prominent garages as a front door?
All right, good point. Want to make a motion? I'll support it.
But I get it. I know from that's right. I get from a real estate perspective. I think everyone here understands why there's two-car garages. I think that is not the issue. And like you said, Phil, like it's a given. Like, people want two-car garages. It's like you said, how do you soften it up? But it's kind of a natural sort of effect, result of, I think that Joe mentioned before. It's kind of a natural effect of densifying a double wide lot. And a double wide lot that's not even really that wide to start with, right? So when you cut it narrow, it's really two narrow little slots. You want two-car garage. This is what you get. Now, I don't know how many times, Greg, you get subdivision on a single lot, but probably not very many every given year. But I'm just thinking, again, putting out there. But I get your statement, Phil. It's kind of a can we be of any support for the applicant as well at the same time, rather than just saying no, come back again.
Yeah.
Can I add a point here?
Of course.
In my opinion, architecturally, this is possible to treat with not so much garage being evident in a very similar plan. Just if there's a lot of townhome developments which are narrower, I guess, with a little prominent entry and all that, if we could just enhance and detail that entry a little bit with some elements or pergola or anything that makes it more important and makes it rather obvious. In this case, actually, everything has been done to somehow subdue the entrance. There is a tree placed in the landscape plan right in front of the entrance, so that it kind of kills the entrance to get all together. And I think it's not as big an issue as we are thinking it is. It can be dealt with in this kind of a configuration as well. And with rather minor modifications, architectural treatments, I think it can be dealt with. Landscape will go a long way in enhancing that entrance also. And the vista of vision that goes to the entrance leads to there can be some treatment of colors, materials, so much more that can be done here, which unfortunately have not been done in the elevational treatment. But I think it's a rather simple fix. And
Maybe
and
an open question is, are we maxed out on floor area? Like, do they have floor area to mold the front entry a bit?
Do you want to talk?
No, we
If
don't
say,
have.
if we say if we extend the front, do we have to take away from the top?
We don't have the like floor area, but we could extend the entrance veranda at the front. So we can, as Ruchir is saying, we can have the covered entrance, plus we can add pergola or trellis in beside the garage. So it's not counted in the floor area, but it adds onto the house, so it adds into the entrance. So entrance is more obvious than just like if you make a hall, you will be creating a 20-feet hallway inside the house, beside the garage. In front, if you move the door to the front beside the garage door, you're having a 20-feet hallway beside the garage inside the house, which is going to look ugly, and which like you feel like you're going in a hotel hallway. Instead of we keep a open space, open veranda, plus we create a open pergola or trellis. That way we can have doorway as it is, but the entrance can be brought forward more towards in line with the garage, and have some like trellis and all that. That way entrance is almost in line with the garage, but it is a passageway to the entrance door, not the entrance is coming through.
and also you will probably need to take that expression and deal with it on an upper level as well, rather than just treating the lower level and the entrance. It will require some design new, but it can be done in my belief. At the same time, what me and Nicholas talked about, staggering the footprint a little bit, that will also be very helpful. And that could expose the entrance expression a little more in 3 dimensions rather than just a front face. So that could be another tool that you explore. But yes, there is going to be some exploration required in which you treat the entrance and make it more distinct compared to the garage.
Absolutely, and if I can interject here, I think that the best solution is going to be a hybrid of these ideas, right? Like, for example, you could take both bottom plans and flip them so that both entrances are in the middle, thereby creating a lot of extra area. And if that's heavily landscaped or nicely landscaped, it could actually form a nice little common courtyard, right? So we're just really looking to step outside of the box and away from saying, well, we've got 4 feet of gravel on one side, 4 feet of concrete, and we're done, right? I think that there could be something very beautiful and lots of opportunity. It would require a redesign, as we've said, upstairs on one of the lots. And it's not to say that's the answer. It's just to say that there is a better design solution out there that can address some of our concerns.
The flipping of the houses, like right now, both the driveways are on the higher side of the elevation. So if we move the house, the driveway on the lower side, the driveway grade, which is permitted by the city to go to the main floor or to the garage, you end up having maybe 12 steps.
Sorry, again, I have to interject. I don't want to get caught in the weeds of working out the technical difficulties that are going to arise from just conversations that we're having now. That's something that you need to take back to the drafting table and work through. We're just simply telling you or giving you some ideas because there's a lot of dissonance here with those garages and how it's laid out right now, right? And depending on how the motion forms here and the outcome of that motion in the vote, it would make good sense to me to really take advantage of some of the ideas that you're hearing here, a combination of staggering, flipping. There's so many different options to make this a beautiful project. And the reality is you can have your cake and eat it too, but you need to spend some time on the design of it in order to do that. You know, if you have a beautiful entrance and 2-car garage, you'll sell it for more, and that's just reality, right? So I think that there's work to do here. It's not always palatable, but there is work to do here to make it a more successful project. So I'm going to close comments now. We're running to 5:15. I'm going to ask the panel for a motion, if someone has had a chance to consider a motion to move the project one way or the other. So if you want a minute, we can take it, but
well, I mean, I guess I can put a motion forward. I'm sorry, I know Phil always and everybody else probably has a more technical wording than I do, but In short, would be, I think, with everyone's comment today, that the applicants should return to design panel. And I think if we've seen from other applicants, some people can turn this around to come back next month. I'm not saying you need to come back in a long time from now, but I think there's been enough comments that the applicant needs to reconsider some of the elements and present back to the ADP. And I think if they take even a handful of some of the comments, the next ADP may be quite quick. So so formalizing that, I guess, that Morris is motion, I guess, is for the applicant to return based on the comments from the committee.
Okay, and is there a seconder for that motion and then discussion?
I will second it. It's
Thank you,
Faye.
Faye. And open discussion for the panel only, please, on the motion. Or we can go to vote. So hearing no further discussion, we'll go to vote. I'm going to go left to right on my screen. Starting with Rushier, voting for or against the motion.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so for, and then Phil is next.
I agree.
Okay, and sorry, Nicholas, are you in favor of the motion?
Yeah.
And Faye in favor of the motion?
Yes.
And I am as well. So that, Greg, is unanimous support for the motion for this applicant to return to the panel after considering all of the discussion that's been had today. So at this time, for Sue and Paul, I would like to thank you for your proposal. Thank you for taking the time to present to us and to listen to our comments and concerns. And we do look forward to seeing a refined proposal from you that we're confident will hopefully get the support of the panel next time around. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the panel.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.
And so for the panel, staying on with the agenda, that was our only item. So I will conclude the meeting at 5:15, and I thank you all for attending.
Okay, I just want to make a quick comment to the
Sure.
panel. I won't be able to attend the next meeting in November. I will be away.
Okay, thanks. We'll keep it in mind. We'll make sure that we have quorum. But
Yeah, sorry, I had a
That's
problem
okay.
getting on here, so.
no, it's all good. We were happy to have you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, everyone.
Bye.
Good night. Okay.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.